Okay, good day everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Carrying on today with Lauren Matthias's Mormon Stories Podcast interview. Just to say, my disclaimer is that I don't have any credentials, no mental health credentials, no legal credentials, nothing like that. I'm an ex-mechanic with an English degree. I have a lot of experience of toxic people, and I'm kind of self-taught about personality traits of various different personality disorders. So I'm gonna try to get through another hour of this today, and so let's get going. Okay, so when we left off, Lauren was talking about having been picked up in the car by her husband, and then crying. I can't remember why. And then him saying, "Oh my God, you have to stop crying." And then she pulls down the sun visor mirror and she looks in the mirror at herself with her tears streaming down her face. And she says, "I love you, Lauren." And that was the moment of transition that she'll never forget, when she realized that she couldn't hang her hopes on the patriarchal blessing or the idea that someone was going to come along and rescue her. So carrying on from that point, and here we go.
And I wish I could say that it was right then that I decided to leave. It wasn't. But I did get reached out to while I was living in Boston by an old producer friend of mine from Salt Lake City. He said, "Hey, are you looking for a reporting job?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he was like, "Well, I'm moving to Boise." He was a producer. He's like, "I'm going to start as a reporter. So they're looking for someone. Would you?"
That's weird. She says she doesn't know if she's looking for a job as a reporter, and yet she's been saying that's like her whole thing, and that's all she wants. So I do feel like she really struggles with her identity, and that external validation is so important, that the reason that maybe in that moment, the reason that she didn't know if she wanted a job as a reporter was because she had not achieved the levels of success that she hoped for with her original job that she quit to get married, and nor did she receive it from the marriage. And so she genuinely doesn't know what to do, because she doesn't feel like she can get what she needs from that job. Obviously, I'm just speculating, but she just has been coming across as such an empty vessel, as such a kind of a howling void, that whatever her passion for reporting or people's stories might be, I do think that some of that is tied up with the idea that she can get the kind of positive attention that she needs by doing that. So anyway, those are just my thoughts.
You want to come? And the last place I wanted to go back to was Idaho. I was like, really? This is my life? I'm 34, I'm married and in a bad marriage and, in a beautiful city, and I've got to go escape back to Idaho. And I said, yeah. So I had a Skype interview, and they were so kind. They were like, my husband was actually graduating in 2 months and he didn't have a job lined up. So I was like, so it wasn't like I'm leaving him. It was like, well, he doesn't have a job lined up. We're destitute. We're going to debt. I have nothing, so maybe I can do this and like have this like place where we can go. So anyway, I get this job in Boise.
She just sounds like a valley girl. And like, and then, and like, and two, and like, and be, and like, and then, and two, and like, and like. It's extremely off-putting in a mid-40s age woman. Again, like, it's not only the things that she's saying, but her manner and her presentation are just so off-putting in terms of her professed profession as an investigative reporter. She just comes off like a vapid teenager. So, I mean, if people watching this aren't questioning her credentials, then I would venture that many of those people are like Lauren, come from a religion that does not encourage questioning, but just accepting things at face value. Because this is, again, like disqualifying is in terms of taking this person seriously. This whole interview so far is just, I would be embarrassed to the point of not wanting to leave my house ever again if I gave an interview like this.
I tell him, he's like, so you're leaving me? I'm like, I'm not leaving you. Like, it was just always like, I'm not leaving you, da da da. Long story short, I end up, and boy.
Again, long story short, like all of her long stories are short. She doesn't actually tell a story at all. I'm leaving you, I'm not leaving you, I'm leaving you, I'm not leaving you. He was horrible and cruel to her, and yet he doesn't want to, like, it's not that things can't be nuanced or weird, or that people can't behave in ways that seem to contradict each other. They absolutely can. But her inability, once again, to render it in such a way that people can kind of relate or even understand the nuance. It's all just this jittery jumping around from these choppy little explanations. I don't know.
Boise, Idaho, married and alone, hoping that he comes because he doesn't have a job, and he's actually like couch surfing, but he will not move to Idaho. He will, his future, he says, is not in Idaho. So he's instead couch surfing with friends in different states. But I set up an apartment for us, but he never comes to Idaho. But
so it's weird, right? Like these two people, I mean, I guess it's common enough these days, and I may have been guilty of similar things myself in terms of getting into relationships with people who didn't have the same goals or aspirations as me. And thinking, that love would solve everything. And of course it never did. But it doesn't seem like, I never got married. So I never had to pay for those mistakes as harshly as someone who marries every one of their mistakes, like my own mother, who was married and divorced 4 times. So yes. Yeah, it just seems like they didn't talk about the future, and that they're just working at cross purposes. So just an observation that neither one of these people seems terribly mature, or to have approached this relationship and this marriage with anything resembling a realistic view of life.
In Boise, Idaho, I started reporting again, and it was like one of the best 2 years of my life. So Boise was like the best move for my career. Like they valued me and they cherished me, and I actually genuinely cherished myself. Like I knew I was a good reporter at this moment. I had enough experience and tools in my tool belt to
I love you, Lauren. So there she goes. She finally achieved the internal validation. It sounds like. We'll see where we go, because
jump back into broadcasting, and they value me in a way that I wasn't valued in my marriage. It was like really empowering, and they were giving me the top stories and making me their lead reporter, and it was a beautiful city. It was not what I had expected. I love Boise. And
so I wonder what the top stories were, because I haven't seen her do any of her top stories. I mean, to be fair, I haven't done a lot of actual investigating of of Lauren and her reporting career. But again, like, her story here could benefit by an example of a story that she did that was really meaningful to her, that was, got really high ratings for the station, like anything at all to lend credence to her claim that she was the top reporter. So I haven't seen no evidence of that.
So I met good friends at work, and I finally had my own bachelorette pad on accident. It wasn't supposed to be. I got it for, a married couple, but I finally at one point put away our, our wedding photos off the wall because I realized he probably wasn't coming. So it was also sad. It's also very sad in that sense. And in order to numb that pain, I would come home from work and just watch Dateline episodes. Once again, true crime. I was able to finally tell Keith Morrison in person, Keith, you got me through my divorce. I was like, I'm glad to hear that. But I was still waiting and hoping. I wasn't completely sure because he would come in occasionally. When I wanted this divorce, he would say, we have everything to gain and nothing to lose. It was very confusing. And not to mention, I was like nearing 35. I wanted a family so badly. So I just kept clinging to this hope that maybe everything could come together. But during this time, I finally was deciding to make the decision to divorce, and I was becoming more and more sure in my decision. And I don't know if you guys remember, but the Ashley Madison dump happened. Do you remember that?
Scandal? Was it like the adultery website? Or
yeah, the adultery website where somebody hacked them and released every email address that had ever been used on Ashley Madison. And I was at work, and lucky for me, we my job was to go research it. So I actually remember, oddly, I put in 2 email addresses and found them both. One was my rapist.
She does that all the time. I actually, as though it's so amazing. I don't know. It's just an observation, but it feels again like that same thing that John was doing in his bio of like trying to hype everything and trying to make it everything to the nth degree, right? Like it's some kind of miracle that she remembers that or whatever. It's just, it's weird.
And the other was my friend's husband, who I just sensed was cheating on her. I didn't tell either of them, but I did, oddly, that day. You can see on that day, I clearly was trying to process something after I found him, like with the first email address, the guy that assaulted me. I reached out to him. Oddly, I had that, like, hey, and he wrote back. I don't know what I was processing, but it's like one of those odd things. Like, I understand why people do that. I found his email, like I knew it, and it was like, that was it. Like I just was like, never reached out again. But like, I was trying to like, should I do something about this? I think I was like feeling like so much anger to him. Like, what do I do? And I didn't do anything. But
great story, Lauren. Another great story. This is the thing, right? Like, it's not to say that people like Lauren, who are terrible human beings, can't be abused by another terrible human being. They can be, and they often are. So, it's not to say that never happened. I'm not going to question that. And, any women who have been through something similar, like date rape, it sounds like, right? Can relate to that, obviously. But she could have told that whole thing in such a way that it was relatable. And instead she told it in such a way that it was just annoying. And so, like, it's very hard to feel anything for her because it seems like her words are so empty that I find myself questioning if she's telling the truth or if she just is incapable of expressing real emotion. I don't know, but it just comes off very weirdly. It doesn't ring true for me, and it just is, I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's a terrible story. I don't necessarily understand how it connects to her Mormon story. And I feel like I haven't seen any other Mormon story podcast, so I don't actually know. But in some ways it feels like she didn't understand the assignment. Because we're supposed to be talking about her Mormon story, not her life story. At least that would be how I would interpret that. I may be wrong, but there's just everything wrong with the way that she told that anecdote, and it leaves me feeling cold and empty instead of feeling, connected or related or empathetic or anything other than kind of judgmental. So, I mean, I don't like the woman, so yeah, but I have pretty high empathy in terms of like feeling other people's pain. And I don't really feel anything here, so I'm not sure what that means. You know, it's obviously not proof of anything, but I suspect a lot of people have a similar experience. And in some ways, that's what makes her confusing, because her words don't match her presentation. And so it's hard to read what's going on, right? People like this can be very confusing, to be sure.
Did he respond?
He did. And then I didn't respond again. It was weird. I don't know why I did that. But with that scandal...
It was weird. I don't know why I did that. Like, literally, she sounds like a 16-year-old. Not that there's anything wrong with 16-year-olds, you know, but they don't have any particularly well-developed emotional skills by that point in terms of, you know, relationships or whatever, right? And may not necessarily understand their own motivations. But look at this again, this presentation here, right? The way she is right now with her shoulders kind of hunched and her chin kind of pulled in. It looks like a really protective stance to me in the way she's kind of looking up from her eyes. Like, I don't know. I get the impression that she's protecting herself there, and I don't feel like she is protecting herself because the content of her conversation is particularly moving for her. She doesn't seem to be moved by any of it. But anyway, moving on. But with that scandal
came Josh Duggar, because Josh Duggar's name was found on the Ashley Madison dump. And it was, you know, just what it was. And I think it was of interest to me at the time because of where I was. Like, here I was being a godly woman, trying to be a wife, you know, and here is Josh Duggar, who's clearly getting on his side to purposely cheat on his wife while professing family values. I don't know. It was just sort of something for me. I was thinking about it.
Okay, I don't really see how that has any specific relation to this story, except that everything is about Lauren. So she's managed to make herself be about the Duggars as well. Although I imagine there were many ructions in the LDS community when all of that came out, to the absolute not surprise of anybody on the outside looking in. Moving on.
And there was a woman named Jessica Kirtland who wrote about it on Facebook. And she, you know, a mother. And she has no idea how much she inspired me and how much I needed what she wrote. So I was like, just having the hardest time pulling the trigger. I mean, I also didn't have any money. Like, I didn't even know how to get divorced. So, like, you know, it's not simple. But I was just so sort of frozen. And this woman wrote this, and I've never forgotten it. And I would just like to read it, because I think it was like the final thing I needed to read to say, I've got to get divorced. And so I'm actually reading this from a book of mine. I wrote a memoir about this kind of point in my life. And so I'm going to read it from my book.
Get ready, everyone. Lauren Matthias on Lauren Matthias.
She says, I know that everyone is laughing about this Josh Duggar story. Oh, a Duggar on Ashley Madison. It's so rich. I wish more people would talk about Anna. I normally keep things light on Facebook, but let's talk about Anna, his wife. Let me tell you, Anna Duggar is in the worst position she could possibly be in right now. Anna Duggar was crippled by her parents by receiving no education, having no work experience or life experience for that matter, and then was shackled to this loser because his family was famous in their religious circle. Anna Duggar was taught that her sole purpose in life, the most meaningful thing that she could do, was to be chaste and proper, a devout wife and a mother. Anna Duggar did that. Anna Duggar followed the rules that were imposed on her from the get-go, and this is what she got in reward. A husband who she found out in the span of 6 months not only molested his own sisters, but was unfaithful to her in the most humiliating way possible. While she was fulfilling her duty of providing him with 4 children and raising them, she lived up to the standard that men set for her of being chaste and godly, and in return, the man who demanded this of her sought women who were the opposite. Be this, they told her, she was. It wasn't enough. What is Anna Duggar supposed to do? She can't divorce because of the religious environment she was brought up in would blame her and ostracize her for it. Even if she would risk that, she has no education and no work experience to fall back on. So how does she support her kids? From where could she summon the ability to turn her back on everything she ever held to be sacred and safe? Her beliefs, the very thing she would turn to for comfort in this kind of crisis, are the very reasons she is in this predicament in the first place. How can she reconcile this? Her parents have utterly, utterly failed her. Think of this. Somewhere, Anna Duggar is sitting in prayer, praying not for the strength to get out and stand on her own, but for the strength to stand by this man she is unfortunately married to lower herself so that he may rise up on her back. As a mother of daughters, this makes me ill. Parents, we must do better by our daughters. Boys, men are born with power. Girls have to command it for themselves. They aren't given it. They assume it and take it, but you have to teach them to do it, that they can do it. We have to teach our daughters that they are not beholden to men like this, that they do not have to marry a man their father deems acceptable and then stay married to that man long, long after he proved himself unacceptable. Educate them, empower them, give them the tools they need to survive on their own if they must. Josh Duggar should be cowering in fear of Anna Duggar right now, cowering. He isn't, but he should be. He should be quaking in fear that the house might fall down around them if he's in the same room as she. Please instill your daughters with the resolve to make a man cower if he must, to say, I don't deserve this, and my children don't deserve this. I wish someone had ever, just once, told Anna she was capable of this and that she knew she is. As for my girls, I'll raise them to think they breathe fire. Now, I want to clarify many.
Okay, so those were not Lauren's words, actually, I think, right? I think she was quoting somebody else's words, and those were the words that got her to do something. So lest you think that Lauren has the skill to write like that, I am pretty sure that was a quote.
People have different opinions about Anna Duggar today than they did in 2015. So take that for what it's worth. This is 2015 before everything else happened with Josh Duggar. But what that meant to me at that time gave me the resolve to get out and to get a divorce. And that was just, that was it. And I was...
Okay, well, so that actually has a point as far as her Mormon story goes, I guess. And maybe kind of explains the whole mess of the story that came before about her marriage. In terms of maybe she's saying that she was trying to be a good Mormon woman to this husband, and he was just not cooperating, I guess. Yeah, it's hard for me to conceive of, again, having no religious upbringing at all. And also, this reminded me a little bit of her story about Elizabeth Smart, and how she realized, that being abducted was worse than having to go to Ohio. And this sort of reminds me in a way of that big, being married to a jerk isn't the same as being married to Josh Duggar. And that she has a lot more resources and could get herself out of that situation. So, just saying.
Ready, and I made that decision.
You spoke so often of hoping to find somebody to rescue you, and then you rescued yourself. And I find that really inspiring.
Thank you. It was a very scary time, but I also remember thinking, as much as I wanted children, there were a few things I had to decide. If I ever did have children or daughters, I just always wanted to raise strong daughters. That was like a dream I always had, to raise strong daughters. I would never be okay with them staying in this marriage. And then I also had to make resolve that I might not ever have kids at this moment too, because I was 35 and it took me that long. And so I had to just decide, I was on my own. I was going to do this. I was never going to give up my career. So that's what that taught me too. I will never give up my career. I will go get a career. I will be okay. Yeah. But.
Well, I mean, that's not terrible. It is relatable. I think a lot of women, Mormon or not, have, had to come to that realization, right? That the man that they thought they were going to be able to rely on for the rest of their life wasn't going to actually be that man. And that realization meant that, a number of things that they had taken for granted about their own lives were not going to be able to come to fruition. So, I've been there myself. And it's a painful thing to be there. And it's a moment of reckoning for a lot of women who are taught that they're going to be taken care of by a stronger, man or whatever. So she is not completely unrelatable in this moment. And in some ways I can relate, to the story at least, whether she's telling the truth, I don't know, but to the having to come to the realization and let go of something that meant a lot to you. And, good for Lauren for being relatable for 5 seconds. Well done, Lauren.
It's time. So that's what I did.
So beautiful, so powerful, so grateful you're willing to share such vulnerable things.
Again, I don't think it's particularly beautiful or powerful or vulnerable. I think that those are, maybe it is in Mormon culture. Maybe women aren't supposed to ever say anything. And so saying anything at all seems powerful and beautiful and vulnerable. I could certainly be missing the nuance of that. But all of that strikes me as pretty ordinary in the course of a life. There are hard truths that we have to come to terms with, most of us. And Lauren's story is probably not all that unusual, A, and B, just so poorly told that I cannot really grok with the words beautiful and powerful and vulnerable so much as, basic and regular and a little bit TMI in several points.
My only quick thoughts, just to kind of share perspective, is you were really trailblazing in a way. You wrote in your outline that you kind of internally identified as a feminist as a child.
Yes.
And what that often means is career-minded, at least envisioning yourself being more than a mom and a wife, potentially, right?
Correct.
But Mormonism, historically, Orthodox Mormonism, just isn't set up for a girl and a young woman to naturally slot into a career.
Correct.
So you're fighting against so much current.
Yes.
And then you add to that, when you talk about, being 31 and 32 and not married, to the rest of the United States in so many areas in the educated world, it's like, so
right.
That's that's the time you start thinking about maybe
right.
getting married, once you've established your career and once you have a way to support yourself, depending on what happens in your marriage, if you get married at all. But instead, and we've covered on Mormon Stories, how many times Mormon women get married at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 is late for a Mormon woman. Mindy, how old were you?
I was 22.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I bet you felt like that was later than a lot of your friends.
I was the last one of my core group of 4 friends, the last to get married at 22.
And Margie was 22, and it felt late for her. And so, 10 years, after an age that is considered late, you're feeling this incredible pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to survive a man's world, Utah, Idaho.
Exactly.
Right. This isn't, LA or San Francisco or Boston or New York, right?
Right.
So many currents you're swimming against, and then you're at your wit's end, and you kind of have been primed to think that you need someone to rescue you.
Correct.
And so in so many ways, you were kind of a trailblazer, and your journey was harrowing because the culture and the structure that on the one hand was always there for you when you needed it with your wards and important people that you met through the church,
Correct.
which were positive associations. The culture also was sort of a current that you were constantly fighting against, and that probably didn't set you up for success.
Correct.
In the past.
Well, good of him to put some structure around her rambling nonsense. So, he has a PhD in counseling psychology, so presumably he has some skills at reading people and helping them to see, their narrative threads in their own life. So good for him for doing that. I'm sure that has perked the audience up quite a bit. It's the longest he has talked since we started.
Path you wanted to follow.
Correct. I think that had I not been LDS, I probably would have started my career at 21 or 22. And here I was, as you say, Dick, there's so many conflicting messages, and I would start and stop. And so, it was like one or the other. It couldn't be both, which is so sad.
But also this layer of, it's incredibly late and I'm never going to find anyone, and I'm desperate that can't, especially for someone who's conscious and or sometimes a little anxious or fearful, that layer of I'm always late, I'm always behind, this is never going to happen.
Yes.
That can't be a good sense of pressure or a layer to be making decisions under.
No.
And also, she's wanting children. there really is a time crunch on that too, as well. If that's part of the equation of the plan that you have for yourself,
Absolutely. No, the biological
clock is.
I actually went in Boise. I thought I've got to take charge of this. And so I went to see how much it would cost to freeze my eggs, because I thought I can take charge of that. And unfortunately it was $10,000. And I have that. I was, not making that, but, that's something else I thought too. Well, if I had started my career earlier, I could afford that. And now I can't because I started so late. And so, but that's the other empowering thing too, is women that do start their careers, they can do that. You don't have to worry about that.
So powerful. And I'm so sorry for all of that difficult stuff. And it's when you all hear what comes next, which is the rise of hidden true crime, you meeting Dr. John, it's such an inspiring story to see the phoenix rise. Mm-hmm. Do I say from the ashes? I don't know. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So that's the cliffhanger for part 2. Before we end, can you show us your book and tell us how people can get it and buy it and what it's called?
Yeah, it's called Escaping Emotional Abuse.
Show us the cover.
The Healing Journey.
Yeah. Okay.
I wrote this as a memoir, but to help women that were possibly in the same situation that I was in, because I had wished that there was something like this for me. When I was in it, it was very confusing. And so I wrote it, and it has actually never been something I've totally shared a ton. It's always been sort of like a behind the scenes, like, hey, if you need it. But I did want to share it here because I feel like if there's a time to share it, actually, it might be Mormon Stories. Like,
if there's a time to share it, it might be when your whole empire is about to burn. So, yeah, just saying.
I wrote it from an LDS female's perspective, or even a Christian woman's perspective.
And people can get it on Amazon?
Yeah, on Amazon.
Escaping Emotional Abuse, and the author is Lauren Matthias. All right. Beautiful. Well, such a powerful part 1 of your story. And we've got so much more because we've got the rise of hidden true crime. So today's episode will be the making of Lauren Matthias.
Okay, sounds good.
Mindy, it's been so lovely to have you as co-host.
Thanks for having me, John. I think you.
Okay, I'm just going to end here because I don't need to see the sign-offs. And we'll start on part 2, which is over here. So let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is July 2nd, 2025, and we're here for part 2 of an epic, traditional, long-form Mormon Stories interview with the Lauren Matthias, co-host of Hidden True Crime Podcast. How you feeling, Lauren?
Good. Got through part 1. Feeling good. It's like a marathon.
We're also here with my guest co-host for today, a face and a name that will be familiar.
So they're wearing the same clothes and everything, so part 2 seems to be happening all at once.
To those of you who've been following Mormon Stories in the past few years, Mindy Caldwell. Hey, Mindy.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, John. Happy to be here with you and Lauren.
And for those who didn't catch part 1 of our interview with Lauren, pause this episode, stop it, go back and watch it. It's about 4 hours. It's worth every minute. But we talked about so many good things. Of course, for those joining us for the first time, Lauren and her husband, Dr. John Matthias, they co-host a super popular true crime YouTube channel and podcast called Hidden True Crime. And also, Lauren and John are consulted nationwide, worldwide, as experts on not only true crime, but they're definitely...
Sorry, Lauren and John are consulted nationwide and worldwide as true crime experts? Is that because they were on Netflix one time or something? Is like, what? Where's the... Is that true?
Subspecialists in true crime connected to Mormonism. And it turns out, it seems like there's a higher percentage of Mormon true crime. Maybe Mormonism punches above its weight in true crime stories. I don't know. Is that possible?
Mormons create content for our podcast.
So Lauren and Dr. John Noel.
Oh, that's a kind of a telling statement, isn't it? The Mormons do, which is why she initially was trying to distance herself from the LDS community. And now, apparently, why she's willing to claim it.
A lot about the Lori Daybell and Chad Daybell case. They've covered Jody Hildebrandt, Ruby Franke, and just so many Mormon and non-Mormon related true crime stories. But we're thrilled to have you back. In part 1, we talked about Lauren's childhood, her upbringing in various parts of Salt Lake City, her always feeling like she wanted to contribute, possibly as a journalist in her life, but as life progressed, things happened that she didn't plan, like her dad ending up in a very public lawsuit that resulted in him going to prison. And in addition, her trying to figure out how to build a journalism career as a Mormon woman who also wanted to get married and have children and live a traditional Mormon lifestyle. And the way that things progressed in last episode is her reaching her 30s, still unmarried, which is a shocking thing for a Mormon woman to reach her 30s unmarried. but she ends up in several unhealthy relationships and ends up marrying a spouse that I will say presents, from what I hear, or presented as very abusive. And that marriage lasted a couple years. And the way we left last episode...
That kind of sounded like he didn't want to commit to saying that her ex-husband was abusive. Interesting.
Episode was that marriage was on the rocks, if not was going to be ending in divorce, while Lauren was able to get a really cool job on a TV station in Boise, Idaho, after having worked in Idaho Falls. That's a bit of a high-level recap. Pocatello? Did I say Idaho Falls? Pocatello?
Same.
No, it's good. Thank you, Minnie. So go check it out. And what we're going to be talking about today is many of the Mormon-related stories that Lauren covered in her time at Boise and after, and ultimately her meeting Dr. John Matthias, really getting into true crime, especially the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell stuff. And then, how Hidden True Crime podcast was founded and where she is now, both with the podcast YouTube channel and with her Mormon faith. How's that?
That was pretty good. That's solid.
Are you sure we're not all...
Sounds exhausting, but okay, let's do it.
Should we all go take a nap, or you think we can do this? Can we do this, Mindy?
We're going to do it. We're pushing through.
We're pushing through. No siestas today.
Okay. All right. So let's see. When we left off, did we end with you saying that there was a divorce, or... So did the divorce happen yet? Okay.
The divorce has happened.
And that's what year?
2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to back up just a tiny bit if it's okay, because I went through my YouTube Facebook Messenger, and I found that we had several correspondences over the years. And the only reason I'm going to mention these is because there are several Mormon stories that you covered, and you were a journalist, but you also were a believing Mormon. And maybe you still are a believing Mormon. We'll see how this ends. But I just want to flag a couple of the cases that or stories that you reached out to me about, and if there's any reflections you have on them, I thought that'd be interesting. Is that all right? So last episode we already talked about Prop 8 and how you find yourself being an LGBT ally or advocate. I found in 2014 you reached out to me about Kate Kelly and ordained women, and that's of course when Kate Kelly was trying to advocate for women in the Mormon Church being able to, obtain priesthood ordination, but also trying to promote feminism. And I'm curious if you have any, since you expressed last episode that you identified as a feminist, as even a young Mormon child, do you have any reflections on that whole ordained women thing and how it felt for you to see that movement come and go as someone who identified as a Mormon feminist?
Yeah, let's see what Lauren has to say about something. Let's see if she can come up with something substantive here that doesn't include 27 likes and ums and ands. Go.
Yeah, that's interesting. At the time, so I can tell you at the time and how I feel now at the time of ordained women, when that was really big, I don't know if I agreed that I wanted women to have the priesthood, but I supported ordained women. Like I supported what they were doing, but I didn't know if I felt as strongly or to participate. I would say that.
So, what? I mean, how is that reflective of a born feminist attitude?
That's changed. So I remember living in Boston was when I realized, you know what? I do support women having the priesthood. So there you go.
Right? What a great answer. I was in Boston when I realized, you know what? I do support women having the priesthood. I mean, my God. What a story. Just a roller coaster of emotion. Wow. Whew. I am so moved.
Yeah.
But at the time, that didn't affect your faith much to see Kate get excommunicated and the movement kind of be beat down by the church?
I reported on your excommunication.
Haven't you got anything to say at all, Lauren? Is basically what he just said.
And Kate Kelly's excommunication. When I was reporting on your excommunication, I interviewed you over the phone, actually, and to interview Kate Kelly, too. I assume so. And I just remember thinking that day, do the story. I just, like, some days, you're so busy, you're not even thinking of...
She has nothing to say about any of this. Did you notice her lead into saying nothing was like 3 sentences of yeah, so for me, that's what that meant when that happened was that, because her brain is like spinning around trying to come up with something to say about this. And here she is like, I don't know. I wasn't even in my own body. I was just doing the story. I didn't have a thought of my own.
About your bias. I was like, just do the story. That wasn't the case with another story, though, that I covered in Boise. I don't know if I wrote you about that. Keep going, because there was one story in Boise that did affect me.
Okay, yeah, I'll get there. So, all right, so, and that makes total sense. You kind of have to compartmentalize. Like, if you're a journalist, it's not about you. It's about the story.
It's about the story. I remember being grateful that Boise gave me the story because it was the only LDS report.
It's weird that she puts "I remember" in front of a lot of stuff that she says. And I feel like, I don't know if I've heard that somewhere on statement analysis or something. Rather than just saying whatever the thing is, she says, "I remember whatever the thing is." And that might be an indication of things being fabricated. Now, I mean, we're talking obviously about people being interrogated in, serious crimes. Not someone being interviewed by a very friendly interviewer. But it sticks out to me every time she goes, "I remember this," or "I remember that," or "I actually this," or "I actually that." Those things grate on my nerves every time she says them. And I'm not sure why, right? I assume there's a reason for that, and it's not just that I'm catty and mean, but maybe I'm just catty and mean.
Reporter.
Yeah.
So I remember being glad that I had the story. But yeah, right. It was just my day's work that day was to report on your excommunication.
Yeah.
So why bother being glad that you're the LDS reporter if you're not even going to approach the story from the point of view of an LDS reporter? And she doesn't even realize that she's just saying, "I'm just a vapid, empty-headed dum-dum who doesn't actually have opinions."
As you're in those early years, as you're covering Mormon-related stories, even some that touch on very personal experiences or feelings or beliefs you had, it sounds like your testimony was kind of Teflon. It was just you were doing your job, and you probably weren't doing a lot of processing about how these stories personally related to your faith. Is that fair?
So I think he is really being nice to her here, and he's saying, "Oh, you have to compartmentalize for the job and all that sort of thing." And I mean, while I suspect that that's true, excuse me, in terms of certain things, like particularly if you're reporting on crime, like you have to be able to leave that at work and go home and live your life. But these are stories about her faith within her community that she grew up in, and she has no thoughts about them. I mean, I believe that she has no thoughts about them, but I think that says something about her, and I don't think it says like, "Oh, she compartmentalized it for the job." I think it means she's just not very deep.
They affected me, not in, I wasn't going to church a ton in Boise. I'll say that. Not that I was purposely not going. I actually tried to go. I'd go occasional, but there wasn't like a great ward that I felt great in. In fact, I do remember going to church once on Mother's Day and leaving, in the middle.
So did she try to find a ward to fit into? That's kind of what she's making it sound like, but I very much doubt that somehow. The way I doubt a lot of what she says. There's like, she feels guilty about not going to church enough, so she makes a reason for it rather than just being, "I wasn't that into it."
Of sacrament meeting, but I always cared about the people and cared about their stories being told. But I think what my belief is people. It's the humanism.
She couldn't even define humanism. Again, right? She cares about the people, but she has no thoughts about their stories. But their stories are basically how we come to know and care about people, right? Like, certainly through the media, right? So she would have to get to know people a little bit, right? By talking to them. And if she cares so much, it's just all so empty. It's just all so empty. I genuinely think she doesn't have the full spectrum of emotions that the rest of us have, that many of us have. And so she is guessing on a lot of this stuff. And she's saying things that she's heard, but the reason that you don't feel anything is because she's just parroting stuff.
Loving one another. So I felt that everybody's story deserved to be told, including yours. Like, I felt for you when you I can't remember our interview, but whatever you felt at that time, I felt like your story deserved to be told. So I think I just always, that's what I cared about, is making sure that everybody felt heard.
She cared about him and she cared about his story, but she can't remember it. And yeah, okay. Like, you would think, see, to my mind, a professional journalist who had once interviewed the person that I was about to be interviewed by, I would go and revisit that interview, revisit my notes, and have those on the tip of my tongue for when I came to the interview, so that I didn't come off like the way that she's coming off here, where she's pretending that she cares so much about everybody, but she can't even be bothered to refresh her memory about what his story was.
But there was a story. Well, there was one story I did. It wasn't necessarily LDS, but it did affect me. And actually, I had to push Boise to let me do it. And it was about a little girl who was transgender, and she was 12, and she wanted to tell her story in Boise, and they didn't want me to do it. So I actually came to the station and said, I want to tell DW's story. And they said, our audience is too conservative. I was the only LDS reporter in the newsroom, so it wasn't that. But just in general, Boise's maybe too conservative for this. And I said, you've got to trust me on this. Like, DW's story needs to be told, because she also had this father who had to change. And he talked about burning her Barbies on the barbecue pit and lighting them up, And then he learned about the suicide rates. And he's like, I've got to change. And I have to have a funeral for my son and a birth for my daughter. And I pushed and I said, if anybody can tell this story in this town, it's me, because I am of the LDS faith. You got to trust me. And I went all the way to corporate. I was like, you've got to let me tell DW's story. And that one really affected me, because I so believe still to this day in DW's story and her dad's story too. And I did win first place at the Idaho Press Clubs for that story. And so that was a story that really affected me again. And but that's probably not a story I contacted you about.
Oh,
but that affected me. And keep. Okay, I don't know what to keep going. And there isn't.
I'm sorry, I'm just gobsmacked at the surface way she told this story. And somehow the big winner in all of it was her. Like, the story was about her, not about the people whose stories are so important to her. And she kind of, I don't know the way she talks about herself. You got to trust me. You got to trust me on this one. I went all the way to corporate. I just don't experience her as having any kind of power in that situation. It just is hard. It's hard to imagine for me. Although, I mean, if she did do the story, and I imagine there would be pushback because of it being a very conservative community, maybe there is truth in it. But again, she has no ability to tell a tale to make it engaging in any way. And what she did with this story, which sounds like it was quite heartrending, she made it about herself and about the award that she won. So, good job, Lauren. Great story.
Another one that really affected me in Boise, but keep going.
So another one that happened in mid-2015 that I'd forgotten about was the Boise Rescue. So for those who have no idea what that means, Denver Snuffer is and was sort of what I would call a neo-fundamentalist, kind of a precursor to the Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. He's an attorney, lived in Sandy, Utah, and he started writing books about receiving what's called the second comforter, which is basically fasting and praying and being as righteous as you can until you can get a personal visitation from Jesus. And he was the first. He was excommunicated actually before me.
Sorry, is that a thing that the Mormon Church encourages? I don't know this. But if it is, it sounds like a recipe for disaster to me.
And before Kate, he was excommunicated in 2013. But in my mind, he was the kickoff of this sort of 10-year span of Mormon Church excommunications. But by mid-2015, and by the way, he had tens of thousands of followers who viewed him as a prophet. They viewed the Mormon Church as fallen, but they viewed Denver Snuffer as like a one mighty and strong, called to restore the restoration, basically, and help get the Mormon Church right, or lead a movement, kind of like the Church of the Firstborn, right? And what's in Visions of Glory, lead sort of a movement of true Mormons that also a lot of them happen to be preppers. So that all happened, and it culminated between his excommunication in 2013 and mid-2015 with a lot of people in Idaho following Denver Snuffer with weird fringe neo-fundamentalist prepper-like Mormon beliefs. So you covered the Boise Rescue, which was Mormon church leaders descending on Boise to try and stave off all the excommunications, resignations of people who became Snufferites. And I don't even know if you remember how much about that or how it influenced you, but that was something we corresponded about.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I do remember interviewing.
Okay, so I don't really know anything about this whole story. It sounds like a lot of all what's going on. Julie Rowe and Tom, what's his name, with the Visions of Glory, similar to all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think I do remember interviewing. So another, just to say, like, she didn't remember John's story and all that. One of the things that you will find with people with high narcissistic personality traits is that they have terrible memories for anything that doesn't matter to them or that didn't matter to them in some way. And if you have someone like that in your life, and you you will undoubtedly come across the thing where you go, oh, you remember that time when blah, 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 and they have zilch memory of it. And I mean, I know we all, if you talk to people who went through the same experience, they will remember different things about it. But it is particularly notable with high narcissistic trait personality types that things that matter to you don't stick in their memory. It's only things that matter to them.
A gentleman who was a Snufferite about that. Yeah. And that is interesting because foreshadowing, Lori Vallow loved Denver Snuffer's book, Psychic Comforter.
Yeah.
Loved, and now declares that she had her own vision of Christ. I don't know. I don't know how much that one affected me. But yeah.
It's fine. And then later in 2015,
it's weird, right? None of these things affected her, and yet she's like this deeply Mormon story person. I mean, sorry, she's a journalist telling these stories, and she's a Mormon struggling with her natural feminism, and none of these things are affecting her. It's weird.
The November 2015 policy comes out, so we've already talked about LGBT stuff. That's when the church, in response to same-sex marriage being legalized nationwide, just lashed out at same-sex married couples and basically said, you're an apostate. If you get same-sex marriage, automatic excommunication for same-sex marriage, and your children can't even get confirmed or baptized or be members until they're 18 and they denounce your marriage. So you covered that.
Yeah, that one affected me. Did I reach out to you about that one?
Yes, we did.
Really? Yeah, that one affected me. In fact, that story that I did that day is, to this date, the most watched news story I've ever done.
Oh, really?
Really? Mm-hmm. On the November 2015 policy?
Yep. And I received love and hate mail. All I did is tell somebody's story, and people calling, saying this is not, someone needs to fix this. And I would get on the phone and say, I'm LDS. They'd say, this is not done right. I'm LDS.
I need to talk to somebody who's LDS.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm the reporter. I'm LDS. But yeah, that story, I told the story of a boy, and a mother and a son, and the son was prepping to go on a mission, and he was no longer now going because his father was gay. And so that was it for him. The entire trajectory of his life changed that day. And so I went over there and told their story.
And then interestingly...
So I went over there and told their story. That's what I did because I am an investigative reporter. It's interesting to me that that he can continue to be so enthusiastic about all of this when she literally has shot down in flames every single one of the things that he has mentioned, or she has told it in such a way that it's about her and not about the actual thing that he mentioned.
We don't have another correspondence, at least in Facebook Messenger, until 2021, where we talk about the Davo case.
Interesting.
So maybe now's a good time to talk about meeting Dr. John and what happened between 2015 and 2021.
I was busy. Yeah.
Okay, people. Put your seatbelts on. We're going to talk about meeting Dr. John.
That's so funny. Memory lane. Wow. Yeah. So, I got divorced I mean this sincerely, preparing to be single for the rest of my life. Like, I was like, I wanted to go to CNN. That was my goal. I was like, you know what? Like,
I doubt that all the way down to the tips of my toes from the very top of my head.
I want to go to CNN. You can do this. You're on your own, Lauren.
CNN. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Pep talk. You might not have kids, but it's okay. Or maybe you can adopt one day. Because I did want a child. I did date occasionally. I got online. Nothing was going well. I had no direction at that point, because I've never dated someone that worked out, like, ever. Like, here I am, 35 and single. So I just, I occasionally wanted to try to date, but I had no real expectations and no real direction. I went out with some people I probably shouldn't have gone out with because I was like, I don't know. I have, there's no list anymore. I have no idea. And I actually was even thinking about what kind of future, it was for me. And you know what article came out at this time? If you remember it, do you remember Time Magazine's article, Jews and Mormon, what those two cultures can tell us about the dating crisis? Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
That came out in 2015, right after I got divorced.
Wow.
So that article was about me. So,
I mean, everything's about Lauren, so of course.
What was the gist?
I sat down and read that article. The gist was that essentially, as you get older, Mormon women and Jewish women are absolutely outnumbered to Mormon men and Jewish men. These two conservative groups, men fall away from the church more than women do. So they're more, as you get older, more active participants in the religions that are female. So
That's interesting. I wonder why that is. I mean, I guess in those very conservative religions, women are really, really discouraged from thinking for themselves, which could certainly account for it. But Lauren Matthias just taught me something, because I did not know that, and I find it quite interesting, actually.
So a lot of them are not going to meet somebody, essentially, or get married. Or if they do meet someone, they're going to settle. And they're going to greater means like breast augmentations and desperate to try to land a man and essentially settling.
Huh. What does that say about Lauren's cosmetic stuff?
And I read that and I thought, yeah, what is this? And this idea in our church that, well, don't worry, if you don't meet a man in this life, you'll have one in the next. Like, to put it mildly, like, I thought that was bullshit. Like, I'm not waiting till I'm dead to find love. And like,
Because she's just contradicted herself, where she said, I was just planning to be alone for the rest of my life, and so now that's bullshit, and she's not planning to be alone, and she's not waiting till she's dead to find love. So again, I know things can be nuanced and there can be whatever, but there may have been times when she thought, I'm probably going to be alone forever, and I better get used to it, because it's never going to work out for me. And she is, making that into, I had, decided I was going to just have a career and I would never be married. So anyway, whatever. She's just boring, and I'm interrupting because she's so boring, I guess. I don't know.
I said, I was determined to be single. I was okay being single, but I'm not going to dedicate my life to finding this LDS return missionary, and if I can't find him, just wait till I'm dead.
Because there's also the Mormon rule, don't marry a non-Mormon.
Yeah, like that.
I mean, okay, but the other thing is that, like, these things may be true about Mormon women and Jewish women, that more of them stay in the faith and that they are then outnumbered because a lot of the men have left the faith and they are now looking for a husband among dwindling numbers. So, yeah, but, I mean, just to say, like, many, many, many people never find a life's partner. And the whole idea of the family and the marriage as the foundation of our society and everything has always been kind of taken for granted as being true, regardless of the fact that enormous numbers of people don't find happiness in marriage, or are not, or find not only not happiness, but, abuse or neglect or whatever. So these are not specifically Mormon issues. I mean, increasing numbers of women are accepting the fact that, maybe it's just not on the cards because that's the way it is, rather than because they have suffered some personal, let down by society. Our societies are built on ideas that we come up with, and we are certainly not infallible, my God.
it's just, you know. So that article really affected me too. Like, yeah, this is, I sort of, yeah, I don't know who to look for. You know, I don't even know, but I don't think I'm going to marry a Mormon man either. And I opened myself up to other possibilities. And actually, I wrote on Facebook, speaking of Facebook, about that article. And that does play a part in my meeting John. So I'll read to you what I wrote on Facebook after I read that article. So
we mentioned this book last time, but tell us the name of this book again.
This book is called Escaping Emotional Abuse: A Healing Journey by yours truly. I wrote it in 2019. So it's so funny too, because I would never post Facebook posts like this now, but I did back then. So here were my thoughts on the article. I said, believe it or not, the rise in Mormon breast implants and $1,000 Jewish dowries can explain why you're alone on a Friday night. Time magazine. That's all I needed to hear to admit the author had done his research. To summarize parts of the article, the Mormon dating scene is comparable to The Bachelor. In past decades, women trying to snag the last remaining good guy would work on her cooking skills or smile more. Today, work is often done by a doctor. It hurts that there is a culture within the faith I love where so many feel they are not enough. We've been complaining about the picky men for years. It's not new. There will always be men and women who measure worth by appearance. So let's try something new. Be unapologetically you. Try spending your Friday night happily alone before spending it with anyone who's wishing you were a 9 instead of an 8.5. There are good men out there, wonderful men. I give men more credit. I think we'll learn about those good men and discover who they are once we love ourselves completely and fully. Once we stop believing we might not be enough. Let's allow the good men to give us some more attention, no matter their religion. Jewish men are sexy, Baptists can drink, and Catholics could be right. So...
Maybe that's true, that there's enough good men out there for all the good women. Maybe there are. But, to my mind, in large part, the societies that we have built are patriarchal and dominated by men who are given special privilege and entitlement just because of their gender. And to that end, or not to that end, but because of that, they are not fit for polite company in many ways, right? They are not prepared to do their share in a partnership. They are not prepared to be one of two in a partnership. They say they are, but then when it comes down to it, they don't contribute to the housework, they don't contribute to the child care. They have expectations that you are going to do all, that the woman is going to do all the emotional labor, etc. So, I mean, well done, Lauren, for championing women being themselves. But if you are championing women being themselves as a way to find the good men, I think that's a fantasy, just as much as the LDS Church ideal sealed in the temple forever marriage is a fantasy. And I don't think it's beautiful or powerful or empowering or any of that stuff. I think it's wishful thinking, basically.
I actually was embarrassed about the post after, and I deleted it a week later, but not before my cousin saw it. And my cousin's boss was John Matthias. And he is a very private guy. He's a psychologist and had worked at this nonprofit clinic for family and children for...
I mean, he was a very private guy. He didn't seem like a particularly private guy when he was out there shooting his mouth off for 4 hours about Christina being a stalker, but sure, let's give Dr. John some special treatment because he's a PhD with a private bent towards privacy.
For 10 years as their clinical director. And somehow or the other, he had come to work and said, this is frustrating. I just can't find anyone to date. And so my cousin had learned that I just got divorced. And she was younger than me. We didn't talk that much. And showed him my photo, and he read that post. So he said, he's not LDS. Would she be okay that I'm not LDS? So she called her aunt. I'm sitting home on the weekend in Boise. I get a call from my aunt, my very LDS aunt. And she says, I'm here to call you to see if you'd be willing to be set up. And I was like, okay. She'd never tried to set me up with anyone. She said, well, they want me to ask 2 questions, but are you okay that he wouldn't be LDS? Again, she's very LDS. And are you okay that he wouldn't be LDS? And he's supposed to be incredibly nice, and he might be a little bit older. And I said, shh.
So the fact that she's asking if, the fact that Lauren's aunt is asking her if she's okay with John not being LDS kind of goes against the idea that she's very LDS. Now, she may have been raised very LDS and she may live a very LDS lifestyle. That doesn't necessarily mean that in her private thoughts she thinks that way. She may just be in the situation that Lauren has already described of realizing that, like, it's this or it's nothing. So again, the brilliant and insightful Lauren Matthias, ladies and gentlemen.
Sure. That works, Aunt Kathy. And then a couple days later, I got a text from John, who introduced himself and set up a time to talk. And
remind us where you were living and where he was living at the time.
I was living in Boise, Idaho still working in Boise as a reporter. And John was in Las Vegas, or partly in Las Vegas. And so I said, sure. And he set up a time to talk, which was also like, wow, he's not asking for my picture. He's not trying to chit chat. Like, okay, he's just like, let's set up a time to talk. I was, just sort of whatever at that moment. So I actually went to my friend's house that night.
Okay, so you actually went to your friend's house that night, again with the actually. I don't know that setting up a time to talk is that weird when you're in Idaho and he's in Nevada. Like, it's not super special and super interesting and like right off the bat he's so different. Like, is that really that different? I don't know. Maybe it was for her. She just bugs me so much.
And I was hanging out with my girlfriend, and I said, hey, at some point, this guy might call. And if he does, I'll just go into the room and answer it really quickly and talk to him. But I wasn't like setting up side time. And she said, sure, absolutely. So we're hanging out at her house, and I get a call, and I go to the other room, and I am in there for 2 hours. We talk about our past unhealthy relationships. We talk about murder. I learned that he's a criminal psychologist, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm actually covering this triple homicide right now. It's really disturbing. Let me tell you about it.
Which was what?
Adam Dees was his name in Boise, Idaho. It was very, very tragic. The sheriff had actually said, and he was retiring. He said, in my entire career, I've never seen something so brutal. But a young 22-year-old Christian man committed his first crime by going into a house.
Criminal history. I remember that story.
No criminal history. He picked a house on Google Maps. So it's like, this is like your worst nightmare. Picked a house on Google Maps, murdered the whole family. And then, And I was there that night. It happened. We'd heard that there were bodies found and went and stood outside the house. So I was covering this really traumatic murder. So we
so she went and stood outside the house, just like was she working for, maybe she was working for an actual news station at the time, and she had some actual legitimacy for being there, unlike her recent foray into attending crime scenes that were still active.
Talked about murder on our first phone call. We talked about unhealthy relationships on our first phone call. He listened. I had never had a phone call like this in my life. And I hung up, and that was that. I didn't expect anything because I just thought, too good to be true. But it was really nice. I thanked my cousin. And
I very much doubt that she didn't expect anything. I think she was peeing her pants waiting to hear from him again because she was so desperate for someone who would listen to her.
So I didn't know what happened, but it was great. And he called. Like, it's so funny because I was divorced in February and it was September. And we talked every night since, like, he called the next night.
Okay, well, how is that funny? It was so funny.
And the next night, and we were quickly falling in love. I mean, it was like love is blind before love is blind. I hadn't even seen a picture of him. He had no presence on the web. And he wasn't asking for a picture of me.
But it was a bit of a surprise when she did see his picture on the web, or did see his picture, or did see him. He is not exactly what you would call traditionally handsome. Is he now?
Me, which I loved, so I wasn't asking for a picture of him. And so I was just talking to this guy every night. He was incredible. But at the same time, Milwaukee had called. The Milwaukee news station, who was part of our company, had called Boise asking to speak to me, and they were wanting to offer me a job interview because they had been watching my stuff and said, we'd like to fly you to Milwaukee.
It's a bigger market than Boise.
Much bigger market than Boise. And a way to Chicago.
Okay, well, good for her. I'm gonna, credit where it's due. If she was putting out work that was catching somebody else's attention, good for her. Good for her. I have a feeling that she's going to turn it down in favor of talking on the phone to Dr. John every night, though. But let's just see.
Chicago, right? And if I have this dream and I've already set the stage, I'm like, I will not.
She has this dream and she's not going to give up her career for a man, and it's all going to be, and then she's going to give up her career for a man.
Not give up my career ever again for a man. Like, I have done this over and over and over again. It will not happen again. So as John and I are talking every night, Milwaukee's calling, and they fly me out. And so I'm telling him, by the way, I'm flying to Milwaukee for a job interview. And I'm texting my cousin. I'm like, look, maybe you should get this guy to come up and meet me. Like, he just kept calling me every night. And so anyway,
Why would she get her cousin to get him to come up and meet her? Is that an LES thing where she couldn't just say, hey, I'm going to be in Milwaukee. Why don't you meet up? We could meet up. Is that the born feminist can't do that? Or is that the LDS thing? Or what is happening there?
we talked while I was in Milwaukee every night. He said, how did it go? I was like, it was incredible. They offered me twice as much as I was making in Boise. They loved me. I come back. And so he's like, he came back the week after I came back from Milwaukee. He finally drove up. And I remember when he drove up, it was actually another murder that I was covering.
Again, I remember when he drove up.
He arrived. I mean, Boise doesn't have murders every day. So he came up, we went to, I was very nervous. I was very anxious when I met him. And it was.
I'll bet she was, hey? I'll bet she just was. She had so many failures because of her inability to understand or read any kind of a situation. She must have been terrified that meeting this person was just going to ruin everything.
It was fun to meet him. He was wonderful. And then he left.
It was fun to meet him and he was wonderful. Wow, Lauren, great story.
Like the next day, and Milwaukee then called and offered me the job.
See, because this story isn't about meeting John. It's about her being offered the job in Milwaukee, even though we're in the meeting Dr. John section of the interview.
And so I had to call him the next day and say, look, it's nice to meet you, but I just got this job in Milwaukee and I'm going to have to accept it. And I hope that we can continue getting to know each other, but I'm going to be in Milwaukee now. And that conversation led to him being, look, I'm falling in love with you. I know this is soon, but we need to talk because I would rather have you not move away. He was older than me. He'd never been married.
I would rather have you not move away. I would rather have you give up the thing that you are claiming is your dream because I'm falling in love with you. So, what a nice guy. Wonderful. He sounds wonderful. He sounds like a controlling dick, but okay.
So I guess I'm sharing this because things went very fast.
So it's really common in relationships with personality disordered people for things to go very fast. So far we have mostly focused on the personality disorder, the traits of various personality disorders that Lauren has, but Dr. John is extremely grandiose, and I do believe, just based on even just the evidence of his little hissy fit over my question and my answer and my whole wonderful, expounding on his son and JJ, leads me to think that there is something going on there too. And then this business here, but then again, this is also part of what I was saying about the entitlement of men who think that she should just give up her career because he's falling in love with her. Listen, I'm falling in love with you, so kind of thing.
And he sat with me on the phone that night, not telling me what to do. No one ever not told me what to do, but sharing what he believed our future could hold.
If only she was willing to give up her dream, right? And she is so desperate for that validation that she did it.
And didn't think that my future held everything in Milwaukee. He's like, I explained to him, like, I cannot give up my career for a man. And he's like, I just think you're not looking at what you're capable of. He was telling me, like, I just think that there are some opportunities. I don't think you should give up your career, but I want you to.
I don't think you should give up your career, but I think you should give up this opportunity, because obviously I understand better than you do who you are and what opportunities there are for you. I mean, that could be considered a pep talk by someone that cares about you, or it could be considered a manipulation by someone who's trying to get their own way. And since these people don't really know each other, their whole relationship, apart from one time, has taken place over the phone. Not to say that you can't care about people genuinely that you've only ever spoken to, but I would still, like, the speed at which things are going, the expectation he has that she's going to see things his way. I mean, I feel like if these two people were very much in love, and yet both kind of emotionally balanced and mature, she would have gone to Milwaukee, and she would have seen what was there for her. And they would have carried on their relationship as it was until such a time as she was able to make a proper decision about Milwaukee, rather than giving in to John's idea because he was falling in love with her. And apparently that had to be addressed immediately, rather than allowing things to play out with someone that you really don't know very well.
Like, just consider, and I think that things could be incredible with us. So it was going very fast.
Wait, what vision did he have for your career?
So that's right. It's too fast. That's a red flag. And the fact that here she is this many years into it and she's talking about it and not mentioning that that's a red flag, especially when we know about the conversation that she had with Christina talking about how she really feels about her relationship. And that was, I believe that conversation took place before this interview. So make of that what you will.
It was better than Milwaukee. I'm just dying to know what his pitch was. You're going to win a daytime Emmy here in St. George? Like, what was the pitch?
He actually...
Yeah, what was the pitch, Lauren? Why did you give up this opportunity that you'd been headhunted for that was your life's dream? What was the pitch?
He said to me then, I think we could even start a business.
Oh, well, there you go. You've known each other for a few weeks, so yeah. That's a good reason to give up this job offer that you've been waiting for all your life.
He said you could be a reporter, but I think that we could do even something bigger. Yeah, he's just like, I think that there could be a business. I think you should just stay open.
Wow. Okay, what's John DeLynn going to say about this?
Like he wanted you to stay.
Yeah.
He was a man in love. Didn't want to lose you.
That's so fun.
He was a man in love. He didn't want to lose you. We're talking about these people have known each other for a few weeks, and she's giving up her life's dream to be with him, and these guys are like, oh, it's so romantic.
I'm telling the story. It's going to be so embarrassing. I don't know why I'm telling this. I was going to tell this story.
Well, I mean, you just got through saying, I'm never going to let a man take me away from my career again.
Yeah.
So I'm just, how did he, that's why I'm asking. He sounds like you did.
I know.
Maybe, or at least temporarily.
Well,
Good noticing, John.
the next day I went into Boise and I gave my 2 weeks notice and took the job in Milwaukee.
Okay.
You did.
And
I did not see that coming.
and I came home and I told him, I said, I took the job. And he was like, wow. But he didn't say you shouldn't have, or he was like, I'm surprised you decided so quick. I'm like, well, they need an answer. Like, I've got it.
I'm surprised you decided so quick, please. You want her to give up her whole life and come and be with you after you've known her for a few weeks. Although maybe she's lying anyway, but who knows.
To do this. So I gave my 2 weeks and I hired a moving van and I was going to Milwaukee. And
I was going to Milwaukee, but that doesn't sound like she followed through. And
he visited again. And then I actually, after that visit,
Actually.
yeah, I was falling in love with him too. And it was hard. It was hard. So ultimately I changed my mind and I called.
Okay. I did expect that. Oh, Lauren, you're so predictable.
Called Milwaukee and I said, I can't do it. And it was like out of a movie. They're like, are you kidding? Like, you could go anywhere from here. Like, it was like a...
I'm guessing that she thinks that this makes her look good. Like, she could go anywhere from here. I was so amazing. They were like, this is just the leaping off point for a internationally famous reporter, Lauren Matthias. Lauren Johnson. But really, it just makes her sound like an idiot for giving up this opportunity for a guy that she's just met because he's falling in love with her. As if they couldn't still be falling in love with each other from Milwaukee to Las Vegas. I mean, I know it's further apart, but this is your whole life. And she's not, like, 20, right?
A hard sell. And they're like, what are you doing? And the irony is, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I was thinking...
Again, Lauren, please define irony.
Myself, what am I doing? And so after I gave up Milwaukee, I then grew really resentful, I think, towards John. And I actually even broke up with him for a second because I was like so angry that like I did that, you know?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Here we go.
It was easier to blame John for what I just did.
Right? Like it was easier to blame Christina for the things that Lauren herself did.
But we got, you know, I'll just say it all worked out. But at that moment...
Wow, great story, Lauren. Wow.
I had no job because I'd given my 2 weeks. So John came up. John had been moving to St. George from Vegas. He's from Chicago, but he thought the Red Rock was beautiful. He was single, and so he wanted to be near to the Red Rock. So he's like, yeah, I live in this town called St. George. I'm like, I know it well.
You're like, I've heard of it.
I've heard of it. And I'm like, there goes my, you know, job in Las Vegas too, you know. So
right, because you might have...
Right? Like, she's just given up her entire dream for somebody whose plans she doesn't even know. But, you know, long story short, it all worked out.
I've been thinking...
I was thinking...
Well, Vegas probably has some opportunities.
Yeah.
For journalism.
Yeah.
Probably has some crime, maybe, in Vegas. Maybe.
So, needless to say,
But she didn't see any of these as red flags, somehow.
He came up to Boise and helped me move to St. George. And I moved to St. George, and then...
I gave up my career for a man, and then...
You know, at that moment, I felt sort of frustrated again with myself and with the situation, and he had never been married, and I remember thinking, like, he's not going to marry me. Like, what have I done? So I expressed this to him, and so he said, well, let's just go elope.
Oh, I was just going to say, she's really impulsive, right? And then she says they went to elope, so...
We did within 2 days, like a real elopement. Like, it was his birthday coming up.
I'm not sure what an elopement is, but I do feel that it has something to do with, like, running away from your parents' home to get married against their wishes. Not just, like, getting married on the spur of the moment. Am I wrong?
And in 2 days, he said, well, if you could find someone to officiate, I don't want to get married in a... He proposed to me on Valentine's Day, I should mention. So I was divorced Valentine's Day 2015, engaged Valentine's Day 2016. But then I wanted to just get married.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. That would just... Oh God. Okay.
Married. And so he said, let's elope. And if you can find an officiator, I don't want to get married in the courthouse, we'll do this. And so I pulled that off. I found an officiator, and we got married at Zion National Park on his birthday, 2016.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I am going to end it there with they got married. So there's going to be 2 more parts to this because I just can't cope with anything longer. It is just too exhausting. So, hang on a sec. So, once again, everybody, thanks for coming. I don't know how interesting this is to people, but I have the kind of OCD that means I have to finish this. And I am not, that's not a real diagnosis. And I'm not super OCD in terms of perfectionism for the most part. But things like whole complete sets, I have to have the whole set. If I have a set of 4 glasses and one of them breaks, it irks me something fierce. So, I mean, I don't lose sleep or anything, but I will not feel right if I don't finish this. So I am going to finish it. And I thank you all very much for coming along on this very irksome and tiresome journey with me. Please like and subscribe and share if you haven't already done so. And thank you very kindly if you have already done so. Just to say once again how much I have been enjoying my little YouTube community that seems to be growing here. So I hope everybody's having a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time, which I might do the last bit of it live. We'll see. Look out for that.